we're going to be watching What's Wrong with Game Tours by Big Iron Riot. Only 5K subscribers, which I think is very underrated. I recently just found his channel, so I kind of wanted to just give it a look-see. I watched like the first like minute or so, and I had to stop because I was like, ooh, this is really good. I'm really liking the flow. I like his editing. So we're just going to go ahead and watch it live. And yeah, you guys let me know how the audio levels are sounding, of course. Without further ado.
Okay, so I literally keep seeing the word everywhere now at this point, the word tourist. And it's wild how fast it took over. Like, I know people use it sparingly back and forth here and there over the years, but man, it's an overdrive as of lately. And it doesn't even slowly work its way into conversations anymore. It kind of just shows up, and it's in everything. Comments, videos, threads. Somebody says something, boom, there's somebody behind them just yell tourist. And I don't know.
So my initial thought with the concept of tourists, especially gaming tourists in general, is that you could take somebody like, I'll throw Asmongold under the bus. We take somebody like Asmongold, right? People might consider him a gaming tourist when he plays some games that he is not really the most proficient at. Like, for example, I know when he started playing Monster Hunter, he got a lot of crap because people were like, oh, I thought you were a gamer. When it's like the guy spent a good chunk of his life playing nothing but World of Warcraft. So does that make him less of a gamer because he chose to prioritize one game over the others? I mean, at the end of the day, us playing games is for recreation. It's for enjoyment. More importantly, it's for relaxation. So you should be doing something that you enjoy. Now, do I think there's a lot of interesting gaming, kind of like, I guess I'll say, experiences out there that I think people should experience? Yeah, absolutely. But is it fair to call somebody a gaming tourist? For example, let's take somebody who just plays League or just play like Marvel Rivals. Does that make them any less of a gamer, even though they've put 10, maybe 20 years? Well, maybe for League, you know, maybe I would think less of somebody who spent 10, 20 years playing League. Okay, it's a bad example. But like if they're only playing a game that caters to them and their interest, does that make them less of a gamer? I don't know.
People say it like it actually means something, like it's been a part of gaming culture or something. It hasn't. And you know what, funny enough about it, all of it, is this word didn't come from nowhere. It actually replaced something far more, I don't know, obvious, but I'll
explain. Is it gatekeeping? I think it's gatekeeping.
When you knew something, when you had a knowledge of something, whether it was anime, games, books, movies, did not matter. You had a natural inclination to protect it at all.
I think he's going to say gatekeeping. Could be wrong.
Costs and lord the information you had against the person next to you, especially if they said they were a fan of the same thing you were a fan of. Why this was? It's just because that's how people were. You explain that you're a fan of Spider-Man, well, little old Riot would show up and explain why he's a bigger fan of Spider-Man. He would explain all the things he knows compared to what you don't know, and he would lord that information above you. That's how it would work. It used to be straight up gatekeeping. You'd come into a conversation and people would test you. They'd start throwing out questions and little details trying to see if you actually knew what they were talking about. And if you didn't, they'd push you out. But hell, at least back then there was a way in. If you didn't know something, you could go learn it. You could come back later and you could actually earn your spot in that space. You cannot do that now. That part's gone. You don't really get tested anymore. You just get labeled, and that label is tourist. And the second that word gets dropped, that's it. Nobody's trying to talk to you. Nobody's trying to correct you. Nobody's even trying to hear you out. You're just done. And it's starting to agitate me so much so that I made a video on it. How about that? And really the only reason that happened is because through all of this, we didn't get rid of gatekeeping. We absolutely just made it lazier. Let me explain.
Made it lazier.
It used to take years to really know a franchise, to really know anything. You had to play everything, dig through it, figure it out as you went. If you wanted to understand something, you had to be there for it. Now, you don't. Now you can sit down for a weekend and catch up on everything. Full playthroughs, breakdowns, timelines, lore explanations, whatever you want, it's there. You can absorb an entire franchise without ever touching the controller if you really wanted to. And people fucking hate that. Not because it's
Yeah,
wrong or
that's
anything
true.
like that, but
They
because the
really do.
information is
They
bad
really
in their
do hate
eyes,
that
because
shit.
it killed the one thing they had over everybody else, and that was time. That was the advantage. That was the barrier. That was what.
I'll stop there, comment, give my 2 cents in. I don't think it's necessarily time. What I think it is it's more of identity, because I notice this a lot with let me think how to say this. Like with Star Wars, I had a very good friend of mine. He was a big fan of Star Wars, and then we kind of got into a heated discussion. I heated on his end. I thought we were having a blast, but we were going back and forth about things, and it was mainly about like what was lore and what wasn't lore. Um, Obviously, things have changed a lot since before Disney took over. Disney, they kind of like drew a line in the sand. Anyways, but I was basically saying I hate this certain version of Star Wars, and he loves that certain version of Star Wars, and I was like, that's fine. And he was like, but how can you hate it? And it kind of became like an argument where it's like, if you don't like this, then you don't like me. And I said, why are you associating this with necessarily like as a personal slight against you just because I don't like this one thing that you like? There is nothing wrong with it at all. You're allowed to like or not like whatever it is that that you're interested in, just like I'm allowed to like and not like whatever I want. But I've noticed, and like I said, I noticed it with Star Wars first, that people do that a lot. It happened with Doctor Who when Matt Smith stepped down and other people took over. And of course, it happens a lot with video games. People, I think, and I'm going to throw Americans out there as an American myself. It's because as Americans, we don't have a sense of culture anymore. I mean, like, yeah, we have the whole American proud, proud to be an American, et cetera, et cetera. But aside from that, we don't really have a strong unifying culture because, I mean, there. Wow, I didn't expect to go political, but here we go. We're going into it. It's because we've kind of been like ashamed to do that, to have like pride in a specific facet of your culture, because it's like, oh well, the U.S. is on stolen land, or you can't have, for example, white pride because then you're white supremacist. You can't have German pride, if you come from German but you live in America, because you could be a Nazi or be descended from a Nazi, stuff like that. And because we don't have that sense of identity anymore, that connection to our culture, that connection to our past, we have very much clung to these kind of like pop culture ish, I don't know, I'll say hooks that and labels that we have put on ourselves to say, oh, I'm a Star Wars fan, I'm a Marvel fan, I'm a Star Trek fan, I'm a horror fan, I'm a Resident Evil fan, and so forth. And all that really does is it's basically creating an artificial culture. Um, I'm not saying that's not healthy, it's just different. And I think that's why people like equate it. Like, for example, if I was to say, oh, I hate Resident Evil games because of X, Y, and Z, reason there'd be people saying, well, how could you hate Resident Evil? I'd be like, I don't know. I just, I didn't like the earlier games. Tank controls are trash. And it'd be like, well, no, how could you say that? Because, because of Jill Sandwich, which is a very early meme, but, I digress in regards to that. Yeah, I don't know. I that's what I've noticed about that particular phenomenon. I also noticed it very distinctly in regards to like the D&D kind of space, where if people are, I think how to say this. Hey, Wiz, if people are really connected to an edition of D&D, like for example, they really like 5th edition, or they really like 3.5, or God forbid, they really like 4th edition. They're kind of like, well, you're a fucking filthy 3.5 player. You're a fucking filthy casual for playing 5th edition. And it's kind of like, I can play any edition of D&D I want. It doesn't make me any less of a gamer. I'm I'm secure in my masculinity. Are you secure in yours, good sir? But I don't know. It's just something I've noticed. America isn't the best country in the world with the richest cultural heritage. Impossible. It's true, and it's really actually really sad. But okay, let's continue with the video. This video is about gatekeeping, or specifically gaming tourists.
Separated people, and now that barrier's gone. And I think that's where the whole tourist thing really comes from. Someone can walk in and learn what you've learned and start talking about it without putting in the same time you did. What are you standing on now? That gap used to mean something, and now it doesn't. And instead of adjusting to that, instead of just accepting that people learn differently now, people started labeling. Because God forbid, if you can't out-know somebody in information anymore, the next move is to decide they don't belong at all. That's what this is. That's why tourists even showed up. At this point now, half of you are with me and half of you are against me, and that's fine. It's opinions. That's what
if you're not with me, then you are against me.
Well, I have you, if you are still in fact here. Let's be 100% about what tourist actually is. It's not a critique or anything like that. It's not someone pointing out a bad take. It's not even someone trying to correct you. It's a shutdown, and that's it. The second someone says tourist, they're not engaging with anything you said. They're not breaking down your point. They're not explaining why you're wrong. They're just done with you. It's an eject button. And that's why it gets used so much, because it's easy. You don't have to think, you don't have to respond, you don't have to risk being wrong. You just label the person and move on like you won something. But you didn't win anything. You just kind of killed the conversation. This is the part that people don't want to admit, because they'll say it's about protecting the game. They'll say it's about keeping bad takes out, or keeping the community clean.
I've heard that so much.
No, and no. If this was true, you'd actually argue the point. You'd explain why something doesn't make sense. You'd correct it. But that's not what happens. What happens is you see something you don't like, and instead of dealing with it, you just write the person off. Tourist. Conversation over. And now nobody learned anything. Nobody gained anything. You didn't defend the game. You just avoided the discussion. And you know what? The more I look at it, the more it has nothing to do with the game or movie or book or anything like that at all. This is about identity. Because being a hardcore fan used to actually mean something. It had weight to it. You put time in, you knew the details, you understood the deeper parts of the franchise. That separated you from them. Now, it's not the same. Now somebody can come in, do their homework in a fraction of the time, and sit in the same conversation as you. Maybe you don't know everything. Maybe they miss a few things. Maybe they don't know everything. But they're there, and that bothers people.
So, on regards to that, there was a whole other let me go back just slightly, because he's put it very well.
In the same conversation as you. Maybe you don't know everything. Maybe
you don't know everything. Maybe you haven't seen everything, which is perfectly valid. I am friends with a bunch of people that are called completionists. In fact, I used to be friends with somebody called The Completionist. He had a pretty big YouTube channel before he shit it all down the toilet. But I digress. And as a result of that, even in regards to like hardcore gaming circles, there is a certain level of prestige, or at least fictitious prestige, that is present there, because people will see things and they'll be like, well, I've 100% did the game, have you? And it's like, well, no, I haven't. Well, why not? Well, because I have a life, I gotta work. I gotta do other things with my time. And it's this like a good one. I used to be really big into King of Fighters. I guess I still am. I really like the lore. I really like the setting for that particular fighting game. But it's when King of Fighters, I think it was 15, came out. I was really big playing King of Fighters. I think it was 13, the one with Ash Crimson where he died. If you're a King of Fighters fan, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, King of Fighters was 15 was coming out. It was going to be a big change because it was going, stories going new directions, etc., etc. Well, one of my friends had bought it day one, and it's an IRL friend, and he brought it over and he was like, hey, let's give it a try. I'm like, all right, cool. And he kicked my ass with it because he knew these new characters better than I did. And some of the old characters that I knew, their movesets and so forth, he just, they function a little bit differently. I mean, that's what happens in fighting games. Things get nerfed, they get buffed, etc. And he was like, I would have thought you would have been enough of a King of Fighters fan that you would have bought this game day one and you would have already known these characters. And I was like, well, bro, I got other shit to do. Like, I love King of Fighters conceptually. I love the series, but I have other things to do with my time, man. Like, what the hell? Anyways.
They miss a few things. Maybe they don't know everything, but they're there. And that bothers.
Oh, also by proxy, I'm no longer friends with that person for that reason. But it's because he didn't just say it like as a jest. He was saying it like an actual dig. Like, well, I guess I'm more of a King of Fighters fan than you because I know this game better than you do. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, you know, casket match me in King of Fighters 97 and we'll see where you stand, bitch. That's a whole other situation.
Others people, because if people can get close to what you are without actually going through the same process, then what exactly are you holding on to? And that's where the shift happens, because now it's not about knowing anymore. It's
I sound pretty uncommitted.
And
yeah,
nobody says
that's what my last ex-wife said.
You're not protecting the game. You're protecting your spot in it. You're protecting the feeling of being the only one who knows, the one who's been there, the one who belongs more than the next person. And the second that starts slipping, that label comes out and it disappears. Tourist. Not because they're wrong, because they're not you.
Because they're not you.
The crazy part is no one can even define what a real fan is. Ask that question and watch how fast it falls apart. There's no checklist or standards. There's no agreed point where someone suddenly qualifies. It just gets made up on the spot. If you agree with someone, you're good. If you don't, you're a tourist. That's how inconsistent it is. And that's how you know it's not real. Because if this was actually about protecting something, there'd be rules. There'd be some kind of clear line, but there really isn't. It's just a label people throw out whenever it's convenient. I think that's the part that bothers me the most. Because you got people out here acting like they can decide who is and isn't a fan without even being able to explain what that means. Like somehow they're the authority on it.
If you guys are ever lost and you're not sure whether you're a fan of something or not, just run it by me. I'll tell you if you're a fan or not. I will be the arbiter of that decision.
A fan is not something you can assign to somebody else. It's something people decide for themselves. If someone says they're a fan, they're a fan. That's it. It's over. They may not know everything. They might get things wrong. They might be brand new. And I'm talking brand fucking new with a bumper sticker that says I love Resident Evil and they've only played part 2 or haven't even touched any of them but heard a story once on YouTube. None of that disqualifies them. All it means is they're at a different point. That's it.
Yeah, that's another thing too. I mean, I know we had a meeting recently for Guild Limitless for the game where wins meet, and that was one thing I had brought up in the meeting, which is like, because our guild wants to be more competitive, wants to play at a higher level, which is perfectly fine. I'm fine with that. But I'm like, if we alienate people that are coming in, we might push out one of our best players who just hasn't blossomed yet. You know, and I'm all for being competitive, especially with Where Winds Meet. I really enjoy that game. But it's kind of like every day is somebody's first day. And that new person coming in, if they're really dedicated and they really blossom and prosper, and you're not there to nurture them, instead you're there to tear them down, especially for a community like that where it's an online sort of community. You know, you have to be there to push them in the right directions. For example, like, hey, if you're interested in, you know, doing guild versus guild or PvP seriously, you know, you should spar a little bit more. You should try to do this, try to do that. Now, I will admit, totally, I'm very bad at PvP. It's a medical condition I have. It sounds ironic to say, but it's a medical condition with my eyes. I can't see the certain flashes that trigger appropriately. So I'm starting to learn to pick up on the sound cues for stuff, which is kind of helping me keep pace, but that's entirely, you know, a different situation. But the game itself does a pretty good job of keeping those cues there. And I think as long as somebody is willing to learn them, they can easily get up and there, I guess, skill-wise competitively. Because, you know, one argument that was being said at the meeting was that gear is kind of irrelevant because it's all about how somebody plays. And I was like, well, yeah, but gear helps. It helps how much of a beating you can take. Anyways.
And instead of letting the process happen, letting people learn, letting people grow,
please let me change lane
early.
It's a good one.
Before it even has a chance to go anywhere, all because they couldn't meet some invisible standard nobody can even explain. Makes sense. That's pretty fair. But this is what kills me the most. People act like how you experience a game is what decides if you belong. Like if you didn't play it a certain way or at a certain time or a certain amount of hours, now your opinion doesn't count? That's horseshit. The story is the story.
I would agree with that. It is
no matter how you
horseshit.
got the information. If you have the story for the game, you have the story for the game. It's in your head now. If you watched a full playthrough, if you broke it down, if you sat there and actually understood what was going on, you have something to say. And I don't care if you held the controller or not, watched your little brother play while hiding under a blanket because
hiding under a
things
blanket
happen in this game. Great.
Nice.
Knowledge is knowledge. That's the part people don't want to admit. They want the experience to be the barrier for some reason because that's the last thing they can hold on to. Time played, hours logged. I was there. 577,000 hours in Fallout 4. You know nothing about Fallout unless you beat my hours. This doesn't automatically make your take better. It doesn't.
I hate that about Fallout. Okay, I'm a big fan of Fallout, but I hate that about Fallout games. See, that was me the first few months when I played without tuning gear and leveling up inner ways. I did it where all I did was pick herbs and take pictures and spot with a few other players, and they were like, "Wow, you're pretty good." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. If people wouldn't have pushed you to give it a try, you probably wouldn't have done it.
It just means you.
Well, not just that, also taking the time to explain, like, here's how you tune gear. This is why you tune gear. This is what to look for. You know, try to tune towards these particular things and reroll for these particular reasons. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Experienced it differently. That's it. You don't need to play in the NFL to be a Cowboys fan. I wouldn't be a Cowboys fan anyway, but I digress. You don't need to step on the field, run the plays, get hit, none of that. You can watch the game, follow the team, understand what's happening, and still be a fan. Nobody questions that. But for some reason with games, we got this idea that you need credentials now all of a sudden. Like you need a resume just to talk. That's bullshit.
A resume
how you
just
got
to
your
talk.
Information from a fandom or a franchise or a book or a movie does not matter. The point is you have that information. The point is you call yourself a fan now. And what many of you are forgetting is that's how you become a fan in the first place. Nobody starts as an expert. Nobody shows up knowing everything. You find something you like, you stick around, and over time you learn more. That's always how it's worked.
Yep,
you watch something, you play something, you hear about something, and if it clicks, you stay. And the longer you stay, the more you pick it up. That's the process. It's always been that way. But now, people don't even get that far. They say one thing wrong or they don't know some detail, and they get hit with that tourist sticker before they even have a chance to settle in.
Yeah, it's so fucking annoying.
What the hell are we doing? You're cutting people off at the starting line. You're not even giving them time to learn anymore, to get invested or actually become part of the space. You're killing the process before it even begins.
It's like riding a bike. If you guys ever rode a bike, like the first time you get on a bike, you're probably gonna fall down, scrape your knee, or at the very least, hit your ass on the floor and then be like, "Oh, I don't want to do this again." If everybody stopped, like their first time doing anything, people would never accomplish anything. And I think it's ridiculous to hold people to that standard as far as like, oh, this is the first time you drove a car and you turned into a ditch, for example. So, you're not allowed to have a license. So when it's like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. That's what driver's ed's for. That's how you fucking learn, by driving the damn car.
And then people turn around and wonder why communities feel smaller or volatile or toxic, why conversations feel stale, why it's the same voices saying the same things over and over again. It's because you pushed everybody else out. You didn't filter anything. You just stopped new people from coming in and growing into it. And that's not how you build anything. That's literally how you shrink it. And at this point, we're doing damage to the game itself, because the more people talking about a game, the better it does. That's just how things work. It's called marketing. Everybody knows this. More discussion, more visibility, more interest. That's what keeps something alive. And we're in a time where developers are actually watching all that. They see the conversations, they see the reactions. Hell, they're in the Reddit feeds with the rest of us just reading stuff. They see what people are saying and what people are liking, what people are criticizing.
That's also very true too. It's a whole different just concept than things in the past. And in the past, people would release games, throw it out there, and then the game would kind of get, butchered, so to speak, in reviews. But nowadays, I can fucking jump on X. I can tag Miro from Happy Paintings and say, hey, why does your game Fear and Hunger suck for this particular thing? You know, why doesn't this character have this particular ability? Or why is it so fucking grimdark or whatever? You know, you're a piece of shit for making it that way. And it's like, never have we had the direct line of contact with not just like a creator, but with people who actually worked on the game. I think it's kind of ridiculous. So you should driving an 18-wheeler. IRL. Well, you see, there's a thing called a CDL license. You have to get certified for that. But yes.
All of that matters. So when you start shutting people down, you're not just winning some random argument online. You're cutting off a part of that feedback. You're reducing the number of voices. The less voices mean less perspective. And the less perspective means worse decisions down the line. And even if they're perspectives you don't agree with, you want to have as many perspectives as possible going into a game because it has to be universal. This shit ain't just made for you. It's not complicated. You need people coming in at different angles. You need people seeing things differently. That's how you get better outcomes. And some of those perspectives are going to come. This game actually looks pretty good. People
entirely unrelated, but this game, I'm watching the gameplay because it's Resident Evil Requiem. The last Resident Evil game I played was 4. This one actually looks pretty decent. Maybe I'd consider it. I don't know.
Who are not tied to the same expectations, who did not spend 40,000 hours on Skyrim. People who notice things you stopped noticing years ago. That shit is valuable, but instead of letting that happen, people just write them off. Tourist. And now the input's gone. Not because it was wrong, but because it came from the wrong person. You know, and half the time people really think they're helping. They really do. They think they're helping the game. They think they're cleaning things up. They think they're getting rid of the bad takes and keeping things pure, making sure only the right voices are being heard. That is short-sighted as hell, because all you're really doing is reducing the number of people willing to speak. People see how fast a label gets thrown around and they just stop engaging. They stop asking questions, they stop sharing opinions, or they just leave entirely. And now what are you left with? A smaller group repeating the same thoughts, having the same conversations, going in circles for years and years. And yeah, it might feel better in the...
They call it a circle jerk. Generally, they're fun with the right people involved, but you get the wrong people in there and they just don't know how to jerk it correctly.
Moment, you don't have to deal with the takes you don't like. You don't have to argue. You don't have to have some new guy coming in explaining what he learned because you've already known it for years. Actually, you don't have to explain anything. Long term, though, you're suffocating your own space. You're winning the argument and losing the franchise in the process. Nothing grows in an environment where people feel like they're not allowed to speak freely. It's not a strong community, it's a shrinking one. I see it in my own community. Silent Hill, Resident Evil, those are my communities. I love talking in there. I love discussing the games that I've spent years playing. And new blood has come into that whole circulation and joined this foray, and more times than not, nobody has anything good to say about them. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people that literally say, hey, I just love Resident Evil because Leon exists, and that's it.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
Need them too, but you're too busy looking at them like intruders, like they skipped the line or something, like they didn't earn their way in. Instead of asking, all right, what do you think? It turns into, why are you here? And that's where the label gets used.
Hold on, one little second, chat. I think someone's at my door. Just a second.
1 minute later.
All right, sorry about that. We've had a real problem in where I'm currently residing with door-to-door solicitation, and it's freaking annoying. I hate it. Anyways, let's continue. I'll probably cut this out of the VOD.
The most tourist. It's not even about what was said at that point. It's about who's saying it. The veterans get to speak and the newcomers have to go away. That is just ass backwards. You're maintaining a closed circle is what you're doing. A closed circle does not evolve. They just sit there and eventually die. And there are some of you in this video as we speak that are listening to me right now and thinking, great, I hope it does. I need you to know that you're not protecting anything. You're controlling it. That's all this is. You're literally trying to control it. You don't own these games. You don't own the communities around them.
That is exactly what I want to talk about. So earlier when I had told that story about a friend that likes Star Wars, and we had gotten to that big heated argument about it, it had got to the point where it was such a heated argument, I had to say something to that extent where it's like, look, this isn't your setting. This is George Lucas's setting. He decided to make these changes. So regardless of whether you think they're right or wrong or whatever, You don't fucking own the setting. You don't own Star Wars, no matter how much you like it. And, you know, I'll just say that kind of ruined that friendship. Because it got a little heated after that. But yeah, like it's true. It's like people think they have divine sovereignty over these particular, I don't know, IPs. And I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where it's like because they view it as a part of their cultural identity or lack thereof cultural identity, which is why they latch onto these other things to kind of fill that hole.
Gets to be here and who doesn't. You're just another person in the conversation. And if you want to get real bleak, you're just a consumer and they're just a company providing a product.
Yeah.
Same as everyone else. And the second you start deciding who's allowed to speak based on how they got into it, you're not helping. You're limiting it. You're closing doors and nobody wants to hear it. And then we get to have conversations where we ask ourselves why nothing changes in the franchise, why nothing changes, why franchises stop taking risks. I'm pointing at myself on this because I do the very same thing. Why everything starts to feel the same. Because we pushed out the voices that would...
Yeah, exactly. People do need to start filling holes in healthier ways. I totally agree with that. For some people, it's religion. And if you want to get into that, that's entirely up to you. For other people, it's like social clubs, social gatherings. I mean, I don't have the answer because obviously my answer is not like a one size fits all type of situation for everybody, because everyone's needs are different. And I think that's also something important to acknowledge as well. You know, as people, we're on different life paths. So what might have worked for me is not going to work for you.
Have changed it. You pushed out the people who could have brought something different, all because they didn't enter the way you wanted them to enter. So yeah.
I'm so glad you said they're filled with Twinkies. Oh my God.
Call someone a tourist if you want. Just understand what you're actually doing when you say it. You're not defending your franchise. You're not the savior of the franchise. You're making sure it never evolves. And when something stops evolving, it will fucking die.
Yes, it will. It will die. Hey, Reeps, how's it going?
For those who do not know who I am, my name is Riot, and I want to thank you.
Yeah, hi, Riot. Thank you for letting us watch and react to your video.
Go into the comment section and let me know how you really feel. I have a knack for wanting to hear from people that don't share my same opinion. It's probably a very, very bad sickness I have, but in the meantime, it'd be nice to hear from you. Also, if you like what you saw, like and subscribe. I cover everything from lore videos to developmental stories and everything else in between.
Gross.
And I would like to hear from you soon.
So in regards to that, I will say for the record, and I'll put this out there as public lore for Mags Noctis. I am actually a very confrontational person. If I have an issue with somebody, I am very direct about it. However, once again, going back to how our society is, people usually associate confrontation with aggression. Confrontation is not always aggression. Sometimes confrontation can just basically be like, hey, seriously, what's going on here? Let's resolve this. I don't like this funkiness hanging in the air between us. And I also understand not every single time and place is made for said confrontation, but generally I've gotten a lot of hate in my professional field because I am a very confrontational person. I will march up to somebody, so to speak, and say, hey, I heard you said some things. I don't appreciate it. Like, what's really going on here, bro? Let's get to the bottom of this. And if we can, sometimes it really helps clear the air. And if not, then at the very least I know, hey, you know what? Fair play. You don't like me for these reasons. You know what that tells me? That tells me if you're getting your ass shanked in the middle of an alley, I'm just going to turn around and walk the other direction and let whatever happens to you happens to you. Because your reasons for not liking me are valid. But that's just me. Once again, guys, this is by Big Iron Riot. I will share this with you, and this video was about what's wrong with game tourists. Huzzah.